So I'm in Rockford, Illinois, and I had driven through Rockford about a year ago, and I did just a north-south drive through the city, and that video brought out a lot of haters. People not liking the stuff I was saying. They didn't like the stats I was saying, telling me I was in the wrong neighborhoods and everything. So had the opportunity to drive through here again, and this time we're going to go through the west side of Rockford, because the west side is supposed to be the worst part of the city, and statistically it seems like that's the worst part. When you look up anything on the west side of Rockford, that's where the majority of the abandoned homes are and stuff like that. So while we drive through, I'm gonna go through some stats on the city as well, because these have changed since the last time I drove through here. The violent crime here is 287% worse than the national average, which is similar to, I believe, Minneapolis or cities of that range. So not safe. 287% worse than the national average it's not good. Homicides here in 2019 they had 18. In 2020 they had 36. 2021 they had 24. 2022 they had 15, and 2023 they had 20. So they went up since well, they go up and down, but they went up just like every city did during 2020, but all cities did that. The murder rates in that same time frame ranged from as low as 10.2 to 24.3. That's a big range, and all of those, that whole range is worse than regular city bad. For some perspective, the 24.3 they had, that's Chicago levels. Chicago's murder rate, I believe in 2023, was 22.5 or somewhere in right around that. Chicago stays in that 20 to 25 range. So Rockford is equal or maybe slightly better than that, but not by much. The city has a population of 145,000. So it's a decent sized city, but not huge by any means. Now we're getting some abandoned buildings already on the side. I don't know if we caught those. Probably missed that. We just passed two buildings that were abandoned. The city, though, they boast clearance rates. They're saying the clearance rates are getting better, and with the numbers they're releasing, it is for the homicides. In 2021 they had 42%. 2022 it was 53% of the homicides were solved, and in 2023 they're reporting that 85% of the homicides they caught the guy. So that's way higher. If you know anything about the homicides across the nation in general, they range in that around that 50% range is like the national average for homicide convictions, or not even convictions, just arrests, solving who did it. It's around 50%. So for them to be up to 85% last year, they're doing really good. And from 2022 to 2023, this is numbers from the city now. So whether these are real or not, I cannot say, but these are numbers from the city. And they're reporting that aggravated assaults went down 20%, shots fired calls went down 31%, the victims injured by gunfire was down 30%, property crimes were up, but only by 3%, and auto thefts were up by 2%. So I can't, that's what the city gives, and so those are the numbers that you use. I like the homicide numbers better because there's a body count, and that's usually not, those numbers aren't usually like smudged at all. But if you believe what the city's putting out, then things are getting better here, like, you know, by a significant margin. They're reporting that 44% of the violent crimes here are domestic related, which is up just from 38% in 2022. So more and more the violent crimes they're having here are domestic. That's almost, I mean, 44%. You're looking at nearly half of the domestic, or of the violent crimes being domestic related. And they also are reporting that the homicides are up 33%. So that's, again, another, you know, number that makes sense. Let's turn here. Turn here and try and see a few, some more of the houses and stuff, and see what things look like. Because so far the city, this is the west side. This is where people told me to go through. And so far I don't see things being all that bad. All right, the assault rates, this is where things start getting interesting. The assault rate is 1,194.2. That's per 100,000 people. That is extremely high. And to give you some perspective on that, Baltimore is 901 and Detroit is 1642. So Rockford, as far as assaults go, is worse than Baltimore, but better than Detroit. Now, those are two cities you don't want to be compared to. And the city is showing a year-over-year increase of just 1% in the crime here. So that's, again, you know, it's showing an increase, but it's not a significant amount. And again, we're driving through this. I mean, there's some of these houses that need a little repair, but for the most part, none of this looks bad. I had a guy leave me directions of which areas to drive through, and I'm driving through the areas that he said to drive through. And basically, these are the bad areas, although it doesn't look, I mean, the houses don't look too bad. I mean, they're not fancier by any means, but they're just average, you know, homes. But the so far nothing looks all that bad. And this is following directions that somebody gave me to follow. Let's go up this way. Yeah, a little run down, but I mean, it's not, well, I guess some of them are pretty bad. It's not hood level though. Oh, there's a couple more run down up that way. No left turn. Go up here and see what else we see. I mean, yeah, a lot of this is kind of run down, but it's not, it's not anything that I think is overly bad. So more stats on the city. These are just general stats now. We got, it's 50% white, 22% Hispanic, 20% black. So it's really diverse. Can't turn, well, let's just go up here. So it's a pretty diverse city. And I know they say diversity is a strength in cities, but a lot of times when you go through these cities that are extremely diverse, they're not necessarily all that safe. I know if you look at the stats of like a city like Oakland, California, that's an extremely diverse city. Extremely diverse. And, oh, what's this building? Let's see what this thing is. That building looks like it's been not in use for a while. Right there, whatever that looks like, an old schoolhouse, maybe church or schoolhouse. And again, I say this in a lot of videos that when I give the race of the people that live here, and I'll say it in this one too, that Asians are too smart to live here, because you never see a big Asian population in any of these cities that are really bad. For whatever reason, they stay out of these bad cities. The average age here is 37.5, which is, you know, pretty normal. Maybe a little on the low end. The average age for the men, this is always weird when this stuff has weird numbers like this, but the average age for the men is 35.9, and the average age for the women is 39. So the women are significantly older. Well, not significantly, you know, 4 years, 3 years. And 23% of the adults here are seniors. So that's a good percentage of your population to be seniors. 23%. And so far this doesn't look all that bad. Although a whole bunch of the houses on that road look abandoned. I read a stat on the abandoned homes here, and apparently there's so many that they, the city has a budget to tear down, like, I don't know what it was, like 35 of them or something like that a year. And even doing that, it's going to take them like 20 years or something to just tear all down all the abandoned buildings. I should have wrote the stat down. It was something ridiculous like that, though. If they were going to tear down like a certain number, and it was still going to take years and years. Yeah, this one is probably on the verge of needing to be torn down. So this must be like one of the bad areas that they were talking about, because all the houses look like they're kind of, well, not all of them, I guess. Some of them look okay still. Oh, here's another one. We can drive past this thing up here. That one looks like that's torn down, or needs to be torn down. Let's drive past this. Hopefully the reflection, you can see that. Yeah, that thing's really bad condition. That's been abandoned for a long time. This must have been a school or something. That looks like that's abandoned too for a long time. That building, all this over here, although that's just missing paint, so that's not necessarily bad. That's, yeah, this is not as nice of an area. Yeah. Warning. Straighten you out there. This Most of these houses don't look that bad. That person's got solar panels all up and down their roof. That house could use some work, but most of them aren't too bad. So those couple of big buildings that need to be torn down, that are probably on the city's list to do, you know, by 2050. So the average income here is about $36,000. It's a 22% poverty rate, which, you know, makes sense. When it's a bad city, there's always a decent sized poverty rate. There's a 39.8% marriage rate. So about 40%, which is pretty good actually for a city like this. 68% of the people were born here, which again is you know, a little on the low side, but you know, decent number. And it shows 7% are non-citizens, but I don't really ever trust those numbers, because somebody has to like admit to being a non-citizen or it's not really going to count. 78.3% of the people that lived here completed the 8th grade, and only 76.9% have completed high school. That's really low even for a bad area. To be that much lower than 80%, 76.9% to be high school graduates. And the test scores here show that only 17% of the people that graduate, of the kids that graduate, only 17% are proficient at reading and math. Illinois as a state is 33%, and the US average is 48%. So if they're graduating kids and only 17% are being proficient at, or at grade level for that matter, for reading and math, they're going to have problems going forward, because that's not a very good percentage. I mean, everyone talks about Baltimore, and you always hear on the news, oh, Baltimore, 0% or 1% of the students can do math and all this, and they always talk about Baltimore, but you got to look at all these other cities in America where the kids are graduating and they literally can't do math or read at grade level. And this is something that every year it gets worse. If I did the same drive next year, the percentage of kids graduating proficient at reading and math will be even below the 17% that I'm saying right now. It'll be below that, because it's going down in all these cities. Every year it goes down. So this was one of the other complaints that I got about the video. The last year's video was that I didn't drive through the downtown. So we're driving through the downtown. Apparently I went through Midtown. I didn't go through downtown. And the Midtown, half the buildings were closed up. I mean, literally half of them, there was nobody in there. And then they're like, well, you drive through there and they're trying to, you know, make that area better and revitalize it and all this other stuff. I'm like, look, I can only do what I see when I'm going through. You know, I don't know the whole history of what they're planning on doing and, you know, stuff like that. So now we're going through the downtown just so that the people that complained on last year's video get to see some of the downtown. So the cost of living here is 16% better than the US average. And housing prices are 39% lower. So this is probably a cheap place to buy a house if you wanted to move somewhere. You know, if you didn't mind the crime and if you don't have any kids. If you don't have any kids, so you're not worried about them going into the public school system here, and you could buy a house here cheap. There's a nice river here I saw pulling in. You know, there's a lot of buildings though that are, oh, this whole area is getting worse. I don't know what all that is over there. I missed the last building I just drove past. That one was all boarded up. But the average home value here is only $95,000, so you could buy a home here relatively cheap. And the average rent is only $784, which is really cheap for a city these days. We got all this stuff. I don't know if I caught that. Oh, here's the stat. I did write it down. In 2022, more than 6,000 vacant homes. And the city has the city has money to demolish 60 to 100 a year. So in 2022, they had over 6,000 vacant homes. And the city only has money to take down 60 to 100 homes a year. So that's why there's a ton of vacant homes here. And some of this is in need of repair. I'll leave it on that side for a little bit. Yeah, that was the stat. I didn't remember it right, but 6,000 vacant homes is a lot for a city to have. We saw a few of them. We didn't see too many. There were a lot of vacant buildings that we went past, or that looked, they looked vacant anyway. But for what people said about the west side being the worst part of the city, it might have been worse than what we saw in last year's video, but I didn't think it was that bad. So everybody that said I needed to go through this side, either I missed the stuff, even though I was following directions given to me by somebody that lived here that told me where to go. I didn't think it was all that bad. And the problems with the last video, so you can see, I don't know if you can't really see it, but just to the left here, adjacent to this road, is a river. Last year's video, the major thing that was wrong with it is all the businesses were closed up. Like all of them. Like I went a whole block or a couple blocks and not a single thing was open on the blocks. And there were no people. It was deserted. And even right now, this is 5:39 p.m. and there's not really all that many people on the road. So it's not like a bustling area, and I'm actually glad it's not, because I wouldn't want to sit in traffic on all these roads right now. And I'm not trying to say that that west side was nice, but it was nowhere near as bad as the people made it out to be. I mean, there's some garbage on the side, but there's not nearly the garbage you see in most cities. This second drive is actually making me like Rockford more than I did after I drove through it last year. I still probably, well, there's a bunch of garbage that are stuck in those trees there. It's still nowhere near what most cities have. I didn't really see that much graffiti. There was some on some of those abandoned buildings, but otherwise there wasn't graffiti everywhere or anything. And now I think we're kind of getting out of everything at this point, so I'll probably let this just play out for another couple minutes and we'll just call it that. Again, not as bad as what people told me the west side would be. And I followed directions that someone that lives here told me to take. I might have gone off a couple of the roads. I wasn't maybe on the exact path, but for the most part, I stayed right to what they said to do. And I don't think it was that bad. I liked this city less in last year's video. I'm not saying I like it, but it's not nearly as bad as what people made it out to be. The crime is a problem, and the kids not learning in school just means that the crime's going to get worse and worse. And I end up out in this area at least once a year for work, and so likely I'll be out this way again next year. Maybe I'll do another video next year and see if things have gotten any better or gotten any worse. And we'll keep an eye on this city, because statistically it's a really bad city as far as crime goes. Their assault rate is like exceedingly high for the size of the city. It's horribly high. and their murder rates, they go up, fluctuate, but they're worse than regular city bad year after year. So this city's just kind of a ticking time bomb unless they get things under control. But they said they solved 85% of the homicides last year, and if that's true, that means these people aren't going to repeat and, you know, have murder after murder by one person, which will help the city a lot. So I'm going to let this play out for a minute, but that's it for Rockford, Illinois. Thanks for watching.